the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee investigating allegations made by the SAPS KwaZulu-Natal Commissioner General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi resumed its high-stakes oral hearings this week, immediately plunging into a series of testimonies that have cast a shadow over the integrity of the South African Police Service. The committee, which is tasked with assessing the credibility and impact of the wide-ranging claims, is now moving into the final phase of its probe, with the nation watching closely as senior law enforcement officials take the stand. The most significant revelations came from Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, the head of crime intelligence in the SAPS, whose testimony detailed disturbing claims of systemic corruption and infiltration. Khumalo alleged that powerful criminal cartels have deeply infiltrated the SAPS, surviving through close relationships with politicians and law enforcement officials who leak sensitive information to derail investigations. So we'll turn in a moment to Mashaile, security strategist, to unpack the testimonies of both General Khumalo as well as former Acting Police Commissioner Phahlane in a moment. But I want you to take a listen to what the former police commissioner, acting police commissioner, actually said in relation to the levels of political interference in the SAPS. Take a listen.
I'm not here solely to respond to what Mr. Nkabinde had disclosed. Of course, what he said is the truth. But also there are a number of issues that General Mkhwanazi himself have spoken to that I will want to talk to, that are covered in my affidavit. We must not shy away. Political interference has been prevalent in the South African Police Service, and it became more prevalent following the 2007 Polokwane conference, where many of these things that leads to where you are taking me happened. Because from there on, we started seeing practices that were not the norm. I'm the last person to be appointed following a submission to cabinet. Everyone else that was appointed after my time, that process did not follow the cabinet process.
All right, let's pick up the conversation with security strategist Mashaile. Good afternoon. It's good to talk to you this afternoon. So let's start with the testimony of Phahlane. It wasn't as free-flowing as many would have wished for. In fact, I can safely say that even getting out of the starting gates was a bit of a tricky one, because he had what he had in mind about what he wanted to put on the table, and it would seem it just compounded the ease with which the MPs were able to navigate that testimony. But when it finally got going, what for you were the main standout points that came out from his testimony?
He had a lot to deal with in terms of what you and I can connect the dots, both professionally and personally. Remember, Tulas, that he is hurt. He alleges that he was wrongfully and unlawfully relieved of his responsibilities or of his post, and professionally he was blocked by this organized crime syndicates operating within the police. Those syndicates would include those who established the Project Phahlane or Operation Remove Phahlane, comprising of this non-South African called Paul O'Sullivan, and he mentioned Robert McBride, he mentioned General Sibia, AfriForum, and quite a number of other people. So in connecting the dots, Tulas, what stood out for me, one, was the pain that he wanted to share, that the politicians did not want to hear, interpreting it as labor relations matters. he actually, and he stood his ground to say, you have to give a hearing to what I have to say, before I can respond to the systemic rot that you want me to address.
Yeah, and in fact, that's an important point, isn't it? Because part of the mandate of this committee, as well as the Nhlanhla Commission, is rooted in criminal infiltration, corruption, but the other element is the element of political interference. So how important is what he's saying, for instance, around the manner in which he was removed as it relates to political interference? Why should we, or should we, write it off as it's tangential, that you were appointed by the president, but when it was time to remove you, it was the minister who was more involved? Or does it strike at the core of this theme of political interference?
It does, Thulas. I'm sure the constitutional prescripts and the regulations unpacking what is prescribed in the Constitution with regard to the conduct of appointments and dismissals or removals were short-circuited, as he has put it to us. He says the minister does not have the legal standing to can remove him as he did, and therefore that showed beyond reasonable doubt the presence of political interference that continues to be raised, amongst other things, by General Mkhwanazi in the July 6th press conference, as you heard him saying these are some of the issues that General Mkhwanazi spoke to.
Yeah. In fact, before we turn to what General Khumalo had to say, one theme that I wanted to pull at with you, Andy, has to do with one institution. We're sort of focusing on a number of these key law enforcement institutions, your SAPS, your Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, Johannesburg Metro Police Department, but now another one, IPID, that investigates the conduct of police. How important was his testimony as it relates to IPID, given the linkages that he then makes to other institutions, such as the investigating directorate in the NPA?
Thulas, the underlying issue that he brought to the fore is that leadership, management, and the operations of the NPA can better be looked at and reviewed, so that you don't have that eventuality that he experienced of IPID sitting with those, amongst others, who are outside of the institution, like the forensic investigator Paul O'Sullivan, in planning and plotting the removal as well as the blockage of those who must be employed. Remember, this stems from the testimony of Ntate Cedric Nkabinde in Parliament, when he detailed how they destroyed General Phahlane, amongst others, with the use of journalists that General Phahlane actually named, one of them being Barry Bateman, the late Karima Brown, and the other lady in the process. So it is critical, he said to us, that you look at these things so that those who come after me must not be exposed to the same evil and satanic practices of blocking people, removing people, destroying people, using evil propaganda to besmirch the names of those who would want to become national commissioners.
All right, let's turn now to Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, the head of crime intelligence, who also testified. Among some of what he was testifying about before that ad hoc committee in Parliament had to do with the National Political Killings Task Team, or is it just the Political Killings Task Team? Take a listen to some of what he had to say when he appeared in Parliament earlier.
I have to ask you, because we've asked General Fani Masemula, we've asked General Khumalo, where is the proof whether it's your messages or anything that says Minister Mkhunu was instructed by Brown Mkhotsi, Matlala, whoever, to disband the PKTT.
In the investigation, there is what we call direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. So if you look at the events as they are happening, and you look also at the communication in terms of the WhatsApp messages, that's what makes one to have those strong suspicions. Even myself, I did not know him. He was, I think on my affidavit, I introduced that subject in one of the paragraphs, that the name was introduced to us for the first time during that meeting, and then we had then to start our investigation by identifying the person. From the National Commissioner's point of view, the name was mentioned by the complainant in our presence, both of us. So I won't be in a position to indicate if he knew him before that meeting.
No, but he referred him to you in October 2024. When he's asked early 2025, he says, I don't know such a person.
Yes, Honorable Chair, as I'm indicating, one cannot be sure whether knowing was in reference to knowing a person physically, so, or knowing that there is a Vusima Kala. The name, as I've mentioned, was mentioned to both of us by the complainant during that meeting. From my side, I can confirm that it was for the first time hearing about the name Vusima Kala.
All right, so that was the head of crime intelligence in the SAPS, Lieutenant General Dumisani Khumalo, testifying before the ad hoc committee earlier on in the week. Let me go back to Andy Mashaile then and pick up on that theme. That bit, that excerpt that we played there, Andy, focuses on what Minister Senzo Mkhunu on leave at the moment, what he knew and when he knew it in relation to Ket Matlala Vusumuzi, Ket Matlala. How important a question is that for it to be answered? Because the Minister, Mkhunu, has already appeared before the committee in Parliament, and as well as the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. We are still none the wiser as to whether we will get a smoking gun that links him with criminal cartels and syndicates, or will we end up with a situation that says, at worst, he was reckless in how he managed relationships and perhaps even naive, allowing for those syndicates to take advantage of his naivety?
Tulas, General Khumalo was between a rock and a hard place in terms of responding to the issues as in terms of the issues that were raised by the members of the ad hoc committee. Remember, Tulas, he says you have direct evidence as well as circumstantial evidence. Now, there is no way in which you can ignore circumstantial evidence and not look at the circumstantial evidence. And you still are conducting investigations that would then be put in a charge sheet when an individual is charged at the end of the day, so that the court can decide. I think with General Khumalo doing what he does best as intelligence operative, he would not have played all the cards out, because it would make other people more wiser than he is.
So lastly then, how much are you looking forward to the testimonies of Robert McBride, because he's in the pipeline for the coming days, the former head of IPID, the investigative directorate, police investigating directorate, as well as the testimony of Julius Mkhwanazi, who has already appeared before the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. How will it help us complete the picture between what we've heard thus far about IPID, its role, as well as those operators who initially were at IPID, some of them now ending up at the investigating directorate in the NPA?
Very, very important in that in this live wire that you and I and the public are playing with, we would want to hear those individuals that you have mentioned come out clearly to put testimony or evidence to the effect that they did not sit and plot, amongst others, General Phahlane, and they did not do wrong in the new image of the IDEC stroke NPA that would have targeted General Khumalo as alleged, so that he can be disturbed or dislodged from the investigations that his team, the PKTT, was leading in support of the GCI Ops, the Gauteng Crime Intelligence operation. So when you listen to the testimony of Ntate McBride and all those that are coming, you are going to want to project what they are going to put before the ad hoc committee, project it into the space of the Madlanga Commission as a justice vector, so that we can then be able to say, we want people to be charged. And who are we who want people to be charged? General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi wants people to be charged so that there can be a decision made by the courts of South Africa, speaking to the issue of political interference, corruption, involvement of criminality and cartels in the police. What is interesting to us about the two situations is the other one looks more at accountability as per the terms of reference. Ntate Madlanga looks at the elements of criminality with 10.2 or 10.4, either 10.2 or 10.4 of the terms of reference, which says where criminality has been identified, I want law enforcement agencies to go and arrest ND and Thulasizwe Simelane for 1, 2, 3. So,
all right. No, you were about to complete that point, but I think we've covered a lot of ground this afternoon. Thank you for your time there, Andy Mashaile, security strategist, also laying out the expectations going forward in the coming days in terms of the witnesses that are next to appear.